This Week in 40K.
Welcome to This Week in 40K, the show about the grimdark that's neither grim nor dark. I'm Colin, and he's Billy, and we just want to remind you that 40K is awesome, and so are you. How you doing, Billy?
I am doing well. It's 4th of July here in America, so it's a holiday, which means that I don't have work looming over my shoulder for the rest of the day, and I'm going on paternity leave at the end of this week, so I really don't have work looming over my shoulder for several months, and I'm feeling this large weight being lifted off my shoulders. Yourself?
And is there going to be 40K during that paternity leave?
Yes, because one of the first things we're doing is moving into a new house that's an actual house with actual space and is 7 minutes from a local game store that I frequent. So yes, there will be much 40K. I am very excited.
Well, excellent. I stayed up really late helping my kids get ready to go see Biodad this month. And then I woke up at 4:15 this morning. And then I drove for 3.5 hours, and that's why this week is an hour late because I couldn't make it back. And so I'm very tired. I slept for 3 hours, then I drove for almost 4 hours. And I had to stop at Starbucks to get some caffeine, or I think literally don't make it home. So now, to celebrate the lack of sleep and the exhaustion, let's do a show for the people. Because my commitment to the people is that strong, Billy.
I respect
my
that.
love and passion for the people is deep. No, actually, that's gas. I was confused.
The irony being that your love and passion for the people actually is that deeply rooted in your soul. But continuing on.
Well, it is, but people don't think that.
Yeah, you're a complicated person. You're an onion.
And no one understands me but my Eldar.
But your Eldar?
Yeah.
Speaking of top stories, so when I first created the outline for this show, top story was whatever's
our top story.
It's possible that I clicked and ran that over Billy talking for my own entertainment value.
Totally fine. Totally capable of recreating what I said. So when I created the outline for the show, top story was whatever's the biggest thing, new rules, new army, something winning 80% of its games. Well, not quite apparently, but if you factor out mirror matches, Eldar are they're that good.
Yep.
As we'll get into later, GW has announced they are changing something with Eldar, and it's coming this week. I woke up this morning hoping that the data slate would be out today. It's not, but it's coming this week. So something is changing with Eldar. And
I know that it's an English company, but I still think that doing it today would be weird. Like, a huge amount of their customer base is literally on vacation, many of them traveling. Like, it's much better to hit us all when we're at our desks, in my opinion.
That's perfectly fair. Perfectly fair.
I know that doesn't make us any less impatient.
Yeah.
So I actually prepared to talk about this a little bit.
Please.
So, and by the way, everybody, we're going to keep doing our kind of free-form show for at least this week. Results are still fairly uninteresting. We'll talk about them, but going through list by list is not a good use of your time. We'll explain why. But what I wanted to do is start off by talking a little bit about Eldar. First of all, Billy and I are longtime Eldar fans. I've won, 20, I think we figured out 2-day tournaments, something insane like that, 18, 20, something like that. And I would say easily 50% of them are Eldar. So, and I don't mean like in the last 2 weeks when Eldar has been off the charts, but the reality is that Eldar is often broken. They are, of the armies that are over the top, they are usually one of them. There was a portion of 9th where they were bad. There was a portion of 10th where they were bad. Or not 10th, excuse me. There's a portion of 8th where they were bad, and there was a portion of 9th where they were bad. But those portions were small. And so I'm bothered by how strong Eldar are. I really am. I've played a bunch of games with them where I'm nerfing myself. Mm-hmm. Where I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this to make myself not as powerful. So yes, it's dumb that it's over the top, but even more than that, I'm concerned that their army design has left them little option for nerfing. And this is a thing that I'd been thinking about last night, because if you're asking me to rank what's most egregious, yes, I put Dev Wounds first, but everybody knows that, and Dev Wounds is a problem in a lot more places than this. And yes, the Wraith Knight's undercosted, but frankly, without Dev Wounds, I don't give a flying patootie about the Wraith Knight. Yes, it's hard to kill without being able to trigger Dev Wounds whenever you want. It just isn't enough shots, and if you roll well on invuls, it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad model, but it's not worth 400 points at that point. And I also think that they're going to nerf it from like 3 different directions.
Yeah.
I think the Wraith Knight's going to get punted into 11th edition. I think that someone's going to hold it with their finger, and it's not going to be Charlie Brown time. Someone's just going to boot that thing, and we're never going to see it for another edition.
Apparently, they were broken in 7th edition. They didn't show up for another. They skipped all of 8th and all of 9th. We get them for a couple of weeks here in 10th, and then back on the shelf. Beautiful model. Enjoy hobbying it. But.
Okay. Yeah. So everybody knows about that, right? Everybody knows that Dev Wounds is not okay, and that Fate Dice triggering Dev Wounds is not okay. Fate Dice also in general are not okay. Mm-hmm. Because someone can be like, well, I'm going to shoot that Fire Prism on the second turn of the game, and you can literally burn 4 Fate Dice and go save, 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 and it might be the completely right decision. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you can just rapid fire the saves is a big deal. You also can just make sure you hit and win with everything. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not okay. Okay, mm-hmm. that ability to just manhandle a part of the phase, right? Like, I was talking to John Lennon about this, and he said, I said something about Eldar and the Wraith Knight and if Dev Wounds it's not very good. He's like, I don't know, without Dev Wounds it killed 2 Caladiuses in the same turn. And I'm like, well, okay, but I don't know that that's math. And John said, well, I mean, if you don't roll the hit and you don't roll the wound and I miss my invuls, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really good point. That you can just be like 2 3s, 2 3s, pass invuls or die.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's really, really bad. So that's evidently absolutely a problem. But by the way, we're going to get to the problem that I'm worried isn't going to get nerfed here in a moment. So I think all of that gets addressed. I think that the Wraith Knight gets punted to orbit. I think they address Dev Wounds. I'm concerned that D cannons are too good, even with a Dev Wound, even with a Fate Dice and Dev Wound adjustment. Just to give people context, here's how I'm playing Eldar. Mm-hmm. I'm playing Eldar with Fate Dice do not trigger crits. Period. Not on sustained hits, not on Dev Wounds, nothing. I'm also playing that you can only use 1 Fate Dice per unit per phase. I don't know that rule will be as strict as I'm playing it, but guys, this is not an army that's worth putting on the table if you don't nerf it.
Yeah. It's not a game.
I need to play it. I'm taking it to the Tacoma Open, which, by the way, somehow is a 450-person 40K tournament, which is, only 3.5 times as big as any 40K tournament that's ever happened in my state. But whatever. So yeah, I'm going to that, and I want to play Eldar, and I also don't want to be unprepared. So I'm nerfing myself to make the games interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, I'm not taking a Wraith Knight. Second of all, I'm nerfing myself by 1 Fate die per unit per phase, which means 1 save. If I do a hit, I can't do damage, like on the Fire Prism, the D cannons and the Bright Lances, where you have variable damage. If I use a Fate die for hit and wound, I can't use it for variable damage. And then the final thing that I'm doing is I'm playing down roughly 280 points, somewhere around there. I played some games down 300 points, and I played some game down 250 points. And why, you might ask? Because after you're done talking about Dev Wounds and the Wraith Knight and everything else and Fate Dice, then you have to talk about the fact that the army's undercosted. Mm-hmm. So
the parts worth taking of the army are undercosted.
But yes,
because there's
lots of things. There are certainly things that are not undercosted, but Fire Prisms are hilariously undercosted. Yeah. So for those that don't know, the most expensive tank is the Falcon, mm-hmm. then the Wave Serpent, then the Night Spinner, and then the cheapest tank by 15 points is the Fire Prism, which, by the way, is the most broken tank maybe in the game.
It's the best anti-big stuff unit in the game right now.
It also doesn't die.
Well, because it's never seen.
Exactly. So Fire Prisms are wildly not okay. I don't know how they're going to address them, but certainly their points need to go up. And because their points need to go up, that's why I'm playing down so many points, because I actually think Do you roll the dice left-handed? That is a real nerf, says DK. I have huge hands. It's not really. I handle my dice well with my hands. Okay.
Just gonna let that pitch go right by.
Yeah, right. So yes, Fire Prism's not okay. Point's not okay. Now we're going to get to the biggest problem that I think Eldar has, and the thing that I think has the best chance of being ignored. Eldar's mobility is not okay. It's just not. The Phantasm strat states, at the end of your opponent's movement phase, move an Eldari unit 7 inches. Avatar, Wraith Knight, Fire Prism, Autark, D-Cannon. I don't give a rat's... I already said rat's patootie. What?
D-Cannon, it's a normal move up to 7 inches, so the D-Cannon can only move 3.
Fair.
Still
Sure, yeah. So Fire and Fade is something that has annoyed people since the beginning of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The ability to shoot a unit and then move it back behind terrain for usually 2 CP in last edition and this one is a really, really incredibly big deal because you can poke out, shoot a thing, in the case of Fire Prism, shoot all of them, and then move back. But the thing about that is it takes 2 CP, which is a lot, and someone can still get an angle on you because they know where you are going into their movement phase.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's already a feel bad. That's already one of the best stratagems in the game. But GW is like, wait, hold my beer. And they made a stratagem called Phantasm, which is at the end of your opponent's movement phase. You get to move a unit up to 7 inches for 1 CP. What unit? Anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is it means you get to see your opponent's movement first. And we're going to look at, I have some pictures ready for you guys of the new terrain from GW being played on. And let me tell you, it's dense.
Yeah.
And let me tell you that Phantasm plus Fire Prism means that they don't die.
Yep.
I am extremely concerned about the mobility. Fire Prisms are also really fast. The army can auto advance 6. It's got warp fighters. It's just really fast. So there's a lot of reasons that Eldar are broken. And my concern is, how do you nerf it in a way that engages it as fun for your opponent and makes it interesting for me, the player who wants to play Eldar? It's my preferred faction. I don't know how they do that, but it's happening this week, or at least the first part of it's happening this week. What do you think of all that, Billy? Your thoughts?
I co-sign every single piece of it because when Nerf hammers hit the highest out nail, so hammer hits the nail. The problem is that there are like 7 more nails that they would need to hit on the way down. If you can no longer take Wraith Knights, Fire Prisms, and D-Cannons, you're going to take Warwalkers, Vipers, and
Wraith Knights, Wraith Lords, rather.
Wraith Lords. I mean, there's so much because of the way that the rerolls work. Those one-shot guns go from being really inefficient to ridiculously efficient, especially even with. And I agree that nerf to fate dice of 1 per unit per phase is probably the most likely place they land.
And also, I think required.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the problem with fate dice is, again, in an army I was playing, I was averaging having access to 21 fate dice, but not over 5 turns, really over 2 turns, because that's all the game was lasting. So it's just, you have so many more resources to just determine outcomes. But anyway, I worry that it is going to be hard to balance them exactly to the point that you're making in a way that is fun for both players.
Yeah. So the best games I've had with Eldar, nerfed the way that I described, are into T-Suns. I've had 2 games into T-Suns that are really interesting with Eldar. But one of them, I messed up the first turn pretty badly. And by doing so, I let the T-Suns basically cover the board and put myself in the worst possible situation. And I tabled him on turn 5.
Yeah.
But he was up by 5 points at the end because he managed to get so much primary early. But if you table, you win now. So that 5-point difference didn't matter.
Where did you see the you table, you win thing?
I don't know, but multiple people have told me that that's the case. I've not looked it up because I just trust my friends and my listeners. If I'm wrong, folks, I'm wrong. Yeah. Regardless, I was down by 5 points and easily could have overcome that 5 points. Every other game I've played, I've tabled my opponent in under 4 turns.
Yeah.
Nidzilla, tabled. Ultramarines, tabled. Just Necrons with the Necron Silvertide, tabled. Like just gone, just dead. It's just too powerful. And this is with me nerfed.
Yeah.
I'm like, you could see what they did this weekend. So I think that that's enough negativity. Because it is negativity.
No, it's accurately describing the situation. We are not saying the sky is falling. We are saying this is a problem, and these are what we think are solutions, and we're concerned about it.
Fair. Yes, I agree with Billy. I believe that Eldar will get nerfed. I think it will be like Tyranids in 9th edition, and they'll have to get nerfed multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
But after their first nerf, I think you'll be able to build to counter them.
Yeah.
And that's going to be what changes the meta. It's not that Eldar are going to be too strong after the nerf. Eldar is as a book, fragile and fast, which means that if you prepare to deal with fragile and fast, you're going to have a better game into Eldar. Chuck deploying aggressively forward with the T-Suns and moving towards me was terrifying.
Yeah.
And now I want to be clear. In my mind, it's Eldar, reasonable gap, Genestealer Cult, reasonable gap, and then in the group that is the actual S tier that isn't being stupid like Genestealer Cult and Eldar. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I could talk for the next half an hour about what's wrong with Genestealer Cult. If they don't get nerfed, I might actually cry. They are so bad for your opponent. Oh my God. They're bring a unit back thing that's so powerful. I've started just not doing that in my test games. I'm just not going to do that mechanic because I'm tabling my opponent so fast that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So Eldar, Genestealer Cult, and then I think Art of War's tier list is the same, but my opinion is that the next batch is Necrons, T-Suns, Ultramarines, and somebody else. Custodes. And somebody I'm forgetting. But so it's not like T-Suns are bad. In fact, they're probably overtuned. Certainly they do a lot of targeted mortals, which is really strong in the current game. Mm-hmm. But anyways, Eldar too strong. T-Sun's also too strong. Genestealer Cult also too strong. But I believe that they are going to nerf things, and I believe that they are going to work at the game and make it better. I don't actually think Imperial Knights are too strong. I think Towering is dumb. Fictitiously famous as Imperial Knights. I actually think that Knights aren't that good, but unfortunately, Towering makes it so that they can just shoot you whenever they want. I've played against Knights, and there was literally nowhere to be on what looked like a completely normal terrain table.
Did you do it on the new GW terrain, and were there ceilings at least on the top of some of your ruins?
No and no. I haven't played it on the GW terrain, but from what I'm seeing of the GW terrain, it's going to be rough. For Towering in particular.
Some of the terrain that I have played with has actually made it so Towering is not seeing the whole board, and you can terrain hop. Your mileage may vary. Yeah.
DK says, how does GSC do into Eldar? Devastating wounds hitting little guys and the mobility get close to the marker as a counter to GSC. The way Fate Dice are right now, GSC teleport in and you use some Fate Dice to make the decan and do 8 mortal wounds to them. Maybe 16 if that's what's needed. The problem right now is you can just Overwatch and just auto do mortals. So right now, GSC got nothing. In my opinion, but I think that GSC are currently the best currently the best matchup for Eldar because of how good their deep strike is, and I think that if you don't play the Eldar incredibly aptly, very carefully and very precisely, I think you're wrecked because they'll come in 3 inches away and you'll be shot off the board.
If you're a mid-tier tournament player playing a member of the USWTC team, and you get Dawn of War. And you get the second deployment so you can put Aberrants 9 inches off the line. And that player goes first. And you play pretty stupidly. The Eldar will lose. I have personal experience of all of those things.
That's a lot of things. Okay, let's talk about news really quick. And then I want to get into talking about a few different things. And I brought slides to talk about it. I brought slides from my weekend of 40K to share some things with you guys. But let's talk about what's new. Let me hit the button because I enjoy the button.
What's new?
I want to talk about terrain last because it'll fit into my slides. Okay. So lots of things are new. There are new starter boxes. The cards are now out or pre-ordered or out.
I think they come out next week.
Okay.
I don't know. They're coming out soon.
Okay. And Forge World points. I think we talked about that last week.
Two more things. Lion has his solo box that's coming out. There's
Okay.
some new formerly Forge World Knights that are now going to be in plastic.
Okay.
The Cerastus box, and then the new starter sets. And then I was going to talk about the Meta Watch, where they talked about the balance patch, which we talked about. It will be quarterly points, semi-annual data slate.
Yep.
And then GT Pack that gave us terrain layouts.
Yes. And they said in that they're going to address towering. No, yes, they said towering in the video. And then in the text, they said fate dice.
Indirect.
What was it? What?
Indirect.
Fate
fire.
dice, indirect, and something else.
I saw Eldari Fate Dice and Indirect Fire were the things I saw.
Okay. And towering. So those are the things that we know for sure are going to get addressed. Those are all things that should be addressed. By the way, an indirect nerf is also another thing that hurts Eldar. The Night Spinner double, basically re-rolling his wounds and just like tagging a bunch of mortals on people while slowing them is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens there. I don't know how they're going to nerf indirect fire. I've thought a lot about that. I don't think that moving to ballistic skill instead of the -1 is as big of a deal as people think it is. It does matter in certain matchups, like against Nids where they have venom throats. But in general, a lot of armies don't have -1s to be hit anymore, so I don't know that that's enough. Anywho, so we got that update, and by the way, that's this week because I got the Tacoma Open email, and they said that it's this week and in effect for the Tacoma Open.
Yeah,
they also said that they're expecting the rules data slate or FAQ, I don't know what they said, to also come out in July. And it sounded like that's also going to come out before Tacoma, but it sounds like that might be next week, like right before Tacoma, is basically what it kind of sounded like, but they didn't promise anything.
Oh yeah. So what they've said is that it's basically clarifying and cleaning up some rules, and so that's how they're going to release it so close to Tacoma and still have it count for it, because they're saying they're not changing anything; they're just explaining to you these 15 more edge cases that everyone found out once it was in the wild. This is how that works.
Okay, well, so that's not as important as the update that we're about to get.
Correct.
Because a lot of the times I go, well, regardless of us looking it up, do you think it should work that way? And my opponent goes, no. And I'm like, great, can we finish playing our game of 40K now? There's obviously some questions. I do want to point out that we have been told that for sure the cards are out by the wonderful community, PCG Scorpion, who I think that's actually a local beer. PCG Scorpion, and then of course Fictitiously Famous, which is one of my favorite online names. So I
want to talk about terrain.
I want to talk about terrain. Okay, so the GT pack came out. Some things were clarified, which it was great. I feel like I totally understand the pregame now. I feel like I understand what they're intending with the missions. Like, there was a bunch in that GT pack that was just valuable to know. They did do some recommendations for how you pair people, and they suggested strength of schedule. No, wind path. They suggested wind path.
Yeah.
Which is cool for them not to be like, hey, maybe you should do battle points. Like, no, battle points is a terrible way to do that.
Well, they also do random after wind path, so you really can't tailor your matchups. Oh, great.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's all great. I love that GW is saying it because it will probably just be the standard then. And there were a few other things where I was like, wait, okay, but I don't remember exactly what they were. I should have written them down. But there were a few other things where I was like, oh, good to understand that and get clarity on it. So yeah, the most important thing in the terrain pack, or excuse me, in the GT pack, it was the terrain. So for about 37 years of my 43-year-old life, I've been wanting them to do a better job on terrain. It's not actually that long, but that's how long it feels. I understand GW's predicament. They want to make terrain rules that are fair and balanced, but everyone has different terrain. Where Billy plays 40K has different terrain than Aberdeen, where I play, or Spokane, where I play, or the Las Vegas Open, or the Tacoma. These all are tournaments with different terrain. And my problem was always you go to a tournament and you don't know what the terrain's going to be like. If it's bad, maybe you lose to a gun line. If it's heavy, maybe you lose to a close combat army. And because the terrain was so wildly different, especially at times at ninth with WTC, because the terrain was so different, you often would end up with people playing different games. Like when 9th edition came out and you could hide Dimacharons easily in WTC terrain. And then you could also hide planes in WTC terrain. And it's like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. But at the same time, if we don't play with dense terrain, the game is awful.
Yeah.
So I've been wanting GW to say, this is what a table's supposed to look like. This is what you're supposed to play on. And they did that. And not only did they did that, but they also said, we understand you all have different terrain. We've built this framework with that in mind.
Yeah.
So what it is, if you guys haven't seen it, is it's basically plates that are the size of the terrain, and then you put terrain on top of it. And the terrain you put on top of it gives you true line of sight, but the base itself gives you obscuring and slowing movement and all the other stuff. And so what that allows them to do is put out a tournament pack and say, this is what a GW tournament is like, and these are the 4 different tables we're going to use. And here's the mission combinations and what tables they work with. Put out these things, and then we showed you on the diagram where we think that the walls should be, but do your best with the terrain that you own. Mm-hmm. I think this is a brilliant solution where they give the game some variety while also having default competitive terrain. Now, if you're playing for fun, I don't care what you do for terrain, right? That doesn't matter. But for tournaments, we need a terrain format, and they've given us that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've brought slides to talk about this.
Can I just say one last piece on that?
Of course.
So one thing with the mission pack, just because Colin corrected me on it, and I've seen it elsewhere on the internet. The mission where you drop objectives in the pregame, and people think that whoever wins that die roll gets 3 objectives. You place the objectives before you know which side of the board you're on, so you can take a chance or you can play them balanced. That's an important thing. It's been around, and I screwed it up. Second, on the terrain thing with the plates, something that I did not know much longer ago is there are stores called plastic stores that just sell plastic. And I priced it out at a local one, and I live in one of the most expensive places in the world, so I can't imagine it's more expensive than this. But if you get up to a volume of 5 sets, you can get the plates or the terrain for $21. So do a little bit of research, find some friends who want to have this terrain, and it's actually really, really reasonable in the context of 40K to get this set up.
Yeah. $21 means that you accidentally bought 2 pots of paint. Like that's just not expensive. So maybe it's 3 pots of paint, but I just, I took a swing. I agree with Billy. I think that and also it's great. I've played on it. I've played with it. It's a great way to do terrain. All right, let's look at some pictures. First of all, I knew that I was going to have to bum everybody out with Eldar talk. So here's a picture of Gus wearing a shirt. Last night, my kids were sorting through some clothes for Goodwill. This is my youngest kid, Sullivan's shirt. They decided to put it on Gus. He was a good sport about it for about 5 minutes, and then he wanted it off.
It's still a good sport to let it get put on in the first place.
It's a very true story. Okay. So this is a table from the mission pack. And it is Ultramarines setting up to play against T-Suns. You can see Chuck's beautiful. By the way, if you're on the podcast, sorry. I'm sorry you can't see this. They've not developed that technology
over to YouTube. Yet. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe.
Yes, and then if you really like us, join our Patreon group or our YouTube and come into our Discord and hang with us. We really appreciate that. Okay, so what I did is I cut out cardboard pieces that match the sizes. Do that. It's easy. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then I put terrain on it to make it look kind of good. These 6x4s are actually less than 2 inches tall. So they're more cover than they are blocking. They're not obscuring. Everything else is obscuring. And we also said that these that the home objective walls are 3-walled on this one rather than 2 because we just didn't have the right terrain for that. But having a giant opening on the side of your terrain is really questionable.
Can I clarify one thing?
Yeah.
The 6x4s are what old obscuring used to be, regardless of their height. All ruins are that now, regardless of their height.
I don't think they're ruins.
It says specifically in the pack, all of these things are ruins, and then as you have better terrain, you can put other things on them. But each one of those plates is as it's described, a ruin. So that's an L down there in the bottom right, not just a random something or other.
Okay. All right. So this, fair enough. So, but you can move through them with vehicles and stuff because they're only 2
Absolutely.
inches.
The parts you can't move through with vehicles are the actual walls that you see there.
Okay. All right. So this is a table from the new GW pack. And I don't know if this looks dense to you, but it is extremely dense.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is instead of looking at the walls, focus in on the corners of the cardboard. Specifically look at the corners and try to draw lines with your eyes from the upper left-hand corner where Jason started to the bottom right-hand corner where Chuck started. First of all, they have absolutely massive L's protecting their home deployment. First of all, huge, enormous enormity blocking their home terrain. Second of all, the middle of the table has a matrix of corners in it that basically makes angles almost impossible. Mm-hmm. There's a 2 barricade thing at the south end of an middle objective. At one point, Chuck put his Terminators behind that, and I could literally not get an angle to shoot them with anything, even without fast-moving Eldar. So very dense, extremely dense, and very, very hard to draw lines across. Mm-hmm. Let me finish talking about the terrain, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts. But yes, this one in particular was extremely dense, and because Space Marine tanks don't have fly, we actually had to redeploy Jason to make the game interesting. He had put his tanks behind his terrain in his home deployment, which is a very tempting thing to do. But we did some calculations, and it meant that at least turn 2 before he got to shoot them, probably turn 3, because of how bad the lines are. This is a pretty big blow to vehicle-heavy armies, just to be clear.
That have incredibly long-range guns. I am actually flipping from the Lancer, which has a 72-inch gun, to the Valiant, which has a bunch of melta-guns, because I'm only going to be shooting 18 inches anyway.
Yeah, but the problem is that Valiant's gun is strength 10 and blows. I still like the Lancer better. Anywho, the Lancer also gives himself his own rerolls, which I think is great. Okay. And then here's that same table from another angle for you guys. And I think from this angle, it's much more noticeable how the lines go through the middle of the table. We were going very carefully off the map they showed. They don't have measurements for everything. I don't know why. They never do.
They do explain it. They basically say that it's part of we don't know what your terrain pieces are. And so they want 4 inches, not from cardboard to cardboard, but from piece of terrain you put on top to piece of terrain, and they think it gives people a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah,
your mileage may vary.
Yeah, so very dense is the story. Okay, so next up, this is another game with different terrain where I had Hammer and Anvil, and this is Nidzilla set up across for me. There's a barbed Hybridule on the far side, and then an Exocrine, and then a Tyrannofax, a Tyrant with 6 T-Guard, another Exocrine, a Haruspex, and a T-Fex. There are also Zoanthropes and Barbgots on this list. Hey, by the way, Nids can get an incredible amount of beef for points if that's what you're into. Here's the problem. This table ruined my game with Josh.
Okay.
Because let's look at it from my deployment zone. I missed taking a picture from the top down, but we are basically we are basically Hammer and Anvil, and the table itself has long walkways on either side of middle terrain. So there's these 2 streets going down the board, and I'm sorry that you can't see them. They're basically where the 2 objectives are on the right-hand side of the screen, are the 2 walkways. You can see them over here as well. The problem is that meant that Josh had to funnel his monsters through those walkways. He didn't have a choice. The terrain was too close. Even making sure it was more than 4 inches apart didn't help him. So what I was able to do is just shoot him. And then at one point I phantasmed Rangers in front of him. So that, or not phantasmed, I just moved them.
Oh, did the Ranger walk thing when someone ends up close?
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. Someone moved within 9. You can see them behind the wall right there in the bottom left of this picture. He moved within 9, and they ran out and blocked the walkway so no other monsters could go forward. More Eldar stupidity. So this beef, and the fire prisms basically picked him up, and the D cannons and night spinners did as well. And he never got to. He did not cross the halfway point of the table with even one model the entire game.
I believe it.
So what that means is not that the train is bad. I actually think that the very Death's Train is good. I think this particular table layout shouldn't be Hammer and Anvil supported. Fine, right? If it was any of the angled terrains or even Dawn of War, I actually think this table's probably pretty good. But maybe I messed up. Maybe it's not actually listed as the appropriate for this mission, and I got it wrong. There's a lot going on, right, to learn. But in general, this was a problem. What it makes me more concerned for, concerned's the wrong word. Everyone has basically proclaimed that this is the vehicle edition because they made close combat really bad into vehicles. Vehicles are much harder to kill. Vehicles shoot really well. Some vehicles are really undercosted. And while I think they're right, I think that the new GW train says, oh yeah, parking lot, how about you suck it? I think that if you take all vehicles and they're not indirect cheatery, that also, or tanks that move, 14, 16 inches?
Yeah.
Is it 14? How far do fire prisms? It never matters how far fire prisms move.
It was 16 and 9th. I think it's 14 and 10th, but I'll tell you right now.
Okay. By the way, I hadn't thought about this, but can you advance one of them and then have the other two shoot through it?
I think so. They move 14 now. 1 second.
Because that means you could spend 1 CP to advance 6.
Yes, that one that advances can't shoot because it's.
Well, sure.
But yes, you absolutely could auto advance to put the focus end piece somewhere, and the other shoot through it.
Sorry, Incarn. Like there's just things that are like, oh dear, that's a fire prism that can now see me. Okay, so that's my concern about the train, but at the same time, I don't want to play in a parking lot. So if they make indirect worse, they've actually trashed on what close combat units do in close combat. And so maybe we will, as a result, end up with more close combat in the game. I don't know.
Yeah, the one thing just to say, because I agree with you that this terrain on this board is bad, but they listed either 3 or 4 of the maps for every single one. And so don't be in a pickup game. Don't be a prisoner to randomness. Don't let picking the wrong map ruin your game. And I'm sure any sort of competent TO is going to have control over this. And this is also going to let, I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into, but the death of player place terrain.
Oh, thank God.
This is actually, because like my concern, I run RTTs for like 10 to 20 people, and I'm the only person in charge. And so fixing all of the terrain before every round would be hard for me while also playing in them, because that's my compensation. With this, hey guys, do map 2. What's map 2? It's in the player pack that you printed out and you have in an email.
Yep.
Move the cardboard. It's not hard.
Yep.
Big fan.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I think that the train pack is just great.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to tell you guys a short story just because it's amusing. This is my opponent's deployment zone. What I did is I drew the 8 victory points for grabbing my opponent's home objective. That's what I rocked out. And then I grabbed, and then I got cleanse at the same time. And so what I did is I got the secure my opponent's home deployment, and I wasn't able to get it. But what I did is on my opponent's turn, I phantasmed the Autarch into a place that was 20 inches from my opponent's home deployment zone. Then I advanced the Autarch, who my Autarch, flying Autarch, by the way, has a fire dragon gun. For one, it's very amusing to shoot that one shot at people that aren't expecting it. It doesn't ever do anything, but people panic, and it's great. But more importantly, because he can advance and shoot, that means he can advance in action. And so Bro jumped 20 inches through the air and landed on my opponent's deployment zone behind his wall of beef. And I thought I would show you the pictures of him chilling, just effing chilling on the deployment zone. So that was a 13 victory point turn, which is, pretty good. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's my story. And now what I would like to do is, it didn't do the animation thing. That's sad. Anywho, here's my final thing to talk about, and then we're going to talk about lists for a little while, or tournaments rather. Mm-hmm. These are my 5 new But these are my 5 reasons for hype. And I think that there's a lot of negativity, and I think it's fair. I do agree with the community that I do feel like we're being asked to beta test 40K for them.
100%.
And if they had told us that that's what we were doing, I would actually be pretty okay with it. If they had said, hey, we have to rewrite the whole thing, there's significant problems with the way we're doing the game, and we've backed ourselves into a corner, which they had. They were in many corners at the same time. They were in kind of a quarter paradox, and they needed to get out of those corners. And if they had said, we need to get out of the corners, it's going to involve rewriting the game, there is so much to the game that it is not practical for us to play test it to the degree we need to. I think that's actually BS, but they could have said that. And they could have said, we know it's going to be crazy, but bear with us. We'll update the game multiple times in the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And if they had said that, I think people would have been a lot calmer.
All of that, cosign all of that. The only other thing I'll say is, there's a saying, you get what you paid for. How much did we pay for all of these rules, guys?
In grief?
I'm just saying, they actually didn't ask us. They didn't say in order to beta test our game, you must spend $200.
Yeah, they did not. And I also enjoy that the app is actually really good. It has its faults.
Yep.
But as a first edition, I think it started out being easier to make a listed than Battlescribe, even though it's got some problems. But I love the people on Discord who are like, on our Discord and on Facebook, who are like, I'm not going to download the app because I'm not willing to give the money for it. And it's like, well, it's free. Well, it's not always going to be free. Okay, you preemptively stand your ground. Like, fine. And also, when we freaked out about the last app, they asked us for $5 a month, and it's a game where a Vindicare Assassin costs $40.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so here's my 5 reasons for hype. These are new reasons that were not on the previous list. I'm still excited. 40K is still fun. GW is changing things. It's going to be great. Here's 5 reasons that I'm excited for 40K. First of all, it is easier to understand your opponent's tech. There has been concern that there are too many special rules because every unit has one. I think those concerns are silly. And I know I'm calling out my own co-host from Best in Faction. But the reality is units had a lot more than one special ability each. And the special abilities were a matrix. And they were confusing. Now, if I want to know what Desolation Marines do, I have to read Desolation Marines. I have to read whatever character my opponent brought to put in that unit, and I have to know the stratagems for Space Marines. That's actually one of the most complicated use cases. For the vast majority of Eldar, you just need to know what Fate Dice do and read the data sheet. So, unless there's characters in the units, it's extremely easy. I've now played against armies I don't know many times. Now, obviously, I'm a quicker learner than the average. I'm quicker at learning than the average bear, but it still is really straightforward. And I think that that's wonderful. And I think it's a great way to make the game. You can go to the table and you can be like, I've not seen Vashtor before. And they can be like, here's Vashtor's card. Yeah. Okay. Number 4, reasons to be hype. Plays faster. It does play faster. The rules are simpler. Die rolling is quicker. Like, there's just stuff. They just put effort into it, and it just mattered. The game is simply playing faster unless you are absolutely learning, and that's okay if that doesn't play quick. But when I play someone who's played it before, like when I play someone who's repped it, like, it's 2 hours. I went to an RTT, and even against inexperienced opponents, we were done in 2 hours. And 2 hours is what I want. 90 minutes is what a lot of people want, but 2 hours is what I want. I want to be done. I want every round of 40K to be done in 2.5 hours, not 3 hours. I'm not going to get that. Rounds aren't actually going to go faster because people are always going to play slow. But I like that when I play 40K, it's fast for me. That's what I'm looking for. What do you think of plays faster as number 4 there, Billy?
Well, so my experience has been very polarized in that I played Eldar for some games, which absolutely played faster. And then I've been playing Garage Hammer with my usual practice opponent where we talk through like every move before we make it. So my experience broadly is that, yes, it does. I'm still trying to figure out why. And I can't quite put my finger on why. I actually had a thought right now as you're saying it, that it might be because melee is worse. And so we're doing less really intricate movement jank in the fight phase.
That's part of it.
Which makes me a little sad because that's some of my favorite part of the game. But yes, there are edges that were sanded off that does seem to make it go faster, and that is
Well, like there's no psychic phase as an example. Okay, so number 3, GW promised that there'd be more survivability, and mostly what I've heard is, well, there's not. Are you sure? So yes, there are things that just flat out do too much damage. But if you remove the outliers, let's say that you look at the damage profiles of everything in the game as a relation to what they can kill or their points or whatever, and you scoop off the top 10% and you scoop off the bottom 10%, I think you'll find that the game is much more survivable. What I've seen is vehicles are extremely more survivable. I'm blown away how good a T9 3-up tank is in Eldar. Because you're almost always in cover, which is actually a thing that I hate, but it does help my number 3 here of more survivability. So now you're a 2-up tank, and a lot of long-range shooting has AP2 or even AP1. So, and if somebody's strength 9 or strength 8, like they're going to have a harder time wounding you. So I think that I'm seeing vehicles last a lot longer unless those vehicles are being shot by Eldar, which again is the outlier. That's the top 10%. And GSC's right there with them. T-Suns can ignore your armor save. Like there are things that will just wreck you, but the majority of the things do okay damage. Yeah, is my experience. Billy?
Absolutely agree. Once they shave we got the math wrong on this part of the game off, this is going to be true. It's absolutely not now because there's enough people have enough access to we got the math wrong parts and are just shoving that against each other. But in the next stage, which I'm going to predict is going to be Horus Heresy in the 41st millennium, because it's going to be a lot of power armor against a lot of power armor, you're going to have protracted fights.
Number 2, amazing framework. I don't think that enough conversation is happening about how much is good in the way that this has all worked. Digital rules, okay? Digital rules that are well written and easy to understand. Designer's commentary that clarifies most of the things that we're wondering from those core rules. Free, easy to read, downloadable, printable rules cards for every unit in the game that they care about. Sorry, Forge World. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there's a RATA to fix the cards when you order them. Do you know why that is? It's because things got fixed in flight right before they were released. I had heard rumors that D-cannons were still 3 per unit. Then they were suddenly 1 when it came out. And shockingly, the errata is, change this to 1 on the data card. Meaning that the data cards that went to print had different rules on them than the ones that were released to us. And that's great because it means they updated a digital file without concern of leaving the physical file behind.
It's a huge
That is the first time GW has ever done that in my memory.
Yeah.
Normally they would have released it and waited 2 weeks to fix it, and then the fixes wouldn't be in your codex and it would be confusing. Is usually how they'd approach that.
The willingness to change, the knowledge that they have to, and the mindset that this is a work in progress. There's absolutely a way that you can see that as a downside, but back to our point of how much money did we pay to beta test this game? $0. Okay, cool.
I don't know about you, but I bought a lot of models since 10th edition came out.
Yes, but it's a hobby game, Colin.
I know.
Yes. But literally the fact that this is changing, 7th edition almost killed them because it was this bad, and then they stuck their head in the sand. Their head is up. They have their radar out. They are trying to make this better.
Correct, if you want to say. Okay. All right. That was number 2, amazing framework. Okay. Number 1, mission pack is dope. Now, this is one I said before, and I acknowledge that. The missions are incredible. If you think the cards are too random, I'd like you to think about it differently. When you're building your army, consider how you're going to play the cards. People are taking incredibly killy beatstick armies, and even in Eldar, I'm finding myself removing some of the more egregious killy things and adding units that are fast and have assault weapons. Why? Because I want to do the secondaries so that if I'm even if I'm tabling my opponent, I may not be able to hold the table while I'm doing that. My army's T3. So what do? Right? I need to have stuff to go play the mission. The cards I think are great. Once a game, being able to toss a card and get a new one is great. First turn, you often end up tossing one to get a CP. Early CP is good. That's a good trade-off. Nobody is scoring all of them every turn. Nobody's doing that unless they're wrecking you and you're going to get obliterated by points anyways. So I understand that people think the cards are random. If you build your deck, if you build your army to be able to at least try, and I know some armies are going to have a hard time with that, and you, if you build your army to try, and you play it strategically of tossing them at the right time. By the way, using the toss to get another card on the first turn is terrible. Let me just share that with everyone so everyone understands. There's 16 cards, okay? And on the first turn of the game, there's a certain number of those cards you're not going to score. Let's call it 8 in a lot of games. So now there's 12 cards that you can maybe score on the first turn, and maybe there's 4 you can absolutely score. There's 8 that you can't, that you might be able to score, and then there's 4 that you absolutely can't. Okay. If you redraw on the first turn, you have an incredibly high likelihood you won't get one you can easily score. Whereas if you do it on the third or fourth turn when your units are all over the field, it is much more likely you'll be able to score it. The missions in the deck will be easier to address. My suggestion, if you get a crazy one on the first turn, like hold your opponent's deployment for objective for 8 points, use it to get a CP. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So that's, and by the way, and if you really don't like the deck and your army doesn't play the deck well, I don't think that fixed objectives is bad. I really don't. I think that there's lots of armies that can go, well, I'm going to be really good at this, and then I'm going to take whatever my opponent will let me kill. And, you know, and people are like, well, I'm not going to get 40. You're not going to get 40 in fixed either, unless in tactical rather, either, unless you're wrecking people. Okay. Okay. Finally, number 1. Oh, I already talked about that. The other part of the mission pack, and the reason why it's number 1 is I actually think the train's incredible.
Yeah.
So 1B would be the train is great. Yes, it has problems, but it has problems in the way that I want them. I want to be able to move infantry around the table strategically and not have them just get picked up.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of times in 40K where infantry is simply not fast enough and your opponent gets angles on them and they're gone. And then you're required to play extremely specific types of armies that work in specific ways. I think a big part of 40K is moving units around the table and having them bash into each other, not just tanks. There you go. That's my presentation. So Billy, we have 8 minutes left. Why don't you tell us, I know, guys, we're not going to go through lists yet. After the balance update, we will go through lists at tournaments. We just will. But right now, I don't need to tell you that 80% of the tournaments from this weekend were won by Eldar and everybody had a Wraith Knight. I don't need to tell you that Ben and Danielle Jurek went first and third, each of them with the exact same list, both of them with 2 Wraith Knights, and they would have gotten first and second, but when they played in the mirror, Ben beat his wife too badly. Whoa. I'm okay. Ben, on the scoreboard. I am really sorry. That was not meant as that sort of joke. I would not make that joke. He won by too many points, is what I'm saying. Super apologies. I do not make domestic violence jokes. At least not on the air. There's not on the air. So that is not okay. Eldars is wildly not okay. It won a lot of stuff. Billy, what would you add for us to hear in the last 7 minutes?
That GSC is like right below it, and you know, maybe this is their plan 1,000 years in the making, is that they're the second most broken thing. Yeah. And the top most broken thing gets fixed and then they don't. The thing that we'll say,
Billy, let me do 15 seconds on GSC because I said they were broken, but I didn't say why.
Anyway.
Yeah. So GSC has a lot of stuff. It has an incredible set of traits and stratagems. So stuff can come in wherever it needs on the table. Stuff can remove. Stuff can come back. They're going to out-jank you. The problem is that while they're out-janking you and playing the mission incredibly well, they're tabling you because the damage profiles on their stuff mixed with the combos. They have a Acolyte bomb unit that costs 150 points and 2 CP that kills basically anything in the game when it comes in. So the aggressive power is too strong. They also have a 55-point character that's bonkers amazing, that's a lone operator that you can just start on the table. It bombs people, blows things up, it indirect fires. It just does things. So GSC, just as bad. Billy.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is what's going to save us potentially from GSC is that while they are several tiers simpler to play than they ever have been, I think they're still fragile enough that
Yeah.
that bad players won't be able to do well with them.
They are much harder to play than Eldar is right now.
Yeah. But if Eldar gets fixed and GSC doesn't, you're just going to see the reign of GSC winning events for a while. Other than that, there's really not a lot interesting to say. It is hilarious looking at results this weekend, and it's just Eldari. I'm interested that a lot of people only brought 2 fire prisms as opposed to 3. I don't know why you would do that.
Because you can't buy them.
Well, that's fair, I guess.
I actually bid on one on eBay. I only have 2, but I am about to inherit a large collection of Eldar. Incidentally, let me actually shout that out. We talked about our Chuck and Chuck's incredibly close friend and my close friend that passed away. He had a huge Eldar collection, and that Eldar collection is being given to me, and I'm going to parse it out and give that money back to his family. So if you're looking for Eldar and you'd like to see that inventory list when it shows up, shoot me a message wherever you find me, Discord, Facebook, whatever you'd like. I'll make sure you see the list as well. But basically, I'm going to sell all the Eldar. First of all, I'm going to buy the stuff that I want because I'm hoping there's a fire prism in there. And I know he's got some gorgeous Wraith Knights, and I don't own any Wraith Knights, so I want to have them even if I'm not going to play with them. I want all of the Eldar. I really enjoy the collection. Anyways, that's a project I got going that I'll talk about. Anything else we can talk about from tournaments that's interesting, Billy?
There was one event.
I saw Orcs that did well in some places, which surprised me.
Not in any of the 4 biggest ones.
Oh, okay, my bad.
The most interesting one that I saw was this one, the Geelong 40K Town Open in the North Shore of Australia, which claims that they just played the mission pack as is, but the highest placing Eldar player was in 9th place and didn't have a Wraith Knight, and I don't think didn't have D-Cannons. So I'm thinking that there might be some shenanigans in their tournament pack. But in a fixed meta, Guard, Nids, Imperial Knights, and Necrons. We are beta testing the game right now. The outliers are identified. The problems are known. Let's see how the solutions come this next week. And they have a gigantic event to test it out at.
Yep. So Billy,
what? Where you'll be able to see Colin.
Yeah, Tacoma Open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to be there. I'll share that I'm anxious. Like I know I'll have fun. Like there's so many people there that I'm going to love seeing. I haven't gotten to hang out with the TNG guys in what feels like, I feel like it's been at least one Tyler Bortel ago, but obviously that's not how that works. Yeah, I haven't seen the TNG guys in a long time. I'm really excited to hang with them. Since I saw them, their participation in the WTC has been announced, and Lucas's starting position on the team has been announced. Oh. I think I owe Lucas a hug. Like, I think that's a really amazing thing that he's got to be super hype about. So I'm excited about the Tacoma Open. My anxiety is that I would like to take Eldar, and I would also like to have fun games. And I don't know that that's going to be the reality of the situation. And I didn't enjoy taking GSC to an RTT last weekend. Yeah. I didn't find that fun. I don't want to play GSC. I don't want to play Eldar. So I don't know what the heck I'm going to do if Eldar are too powerful for me to have fun. I'm not, just so we're clear, guys, I know that in the past I've been I'm going to this tournament and I will win. And then most of the time I'm right. That's not at all where I'm coming from. I haven't played in a 9-round tournament since 2019. I haven't been going to big tournaments. I haven't been doing that for the last several years. I'm not competition ready to that degree. If I win the whole thing, I will be shocked because it's just going to be really hard for me to keep not only my momentum and my energy, but also my mood. It's going to be really hard for me over that many days and that tiring. So yeah, I think that's going to be super interesting. But that's going to be the first big 10th edition tournament, and I'm going to try to bring a lot of information from it. Yeah. Okay. We did a show.
We did.
All right. I feel like there's more things we should say. I don't actually want to stop, but we should.
I mean, the only other thing to say is that you will get to see this background one more time, and then I will be moving the day after next week's episode. So if I'm a little bit frazzled and things look a little bit crazy, it's because you try to live a life and move and have a newborn.
Unlike normal when you're not frazzled and crazy at all.
There's a little bit more together that I vaguely remember I once was. I don't quite recall when it was, but it was at a time.
Yeah, there was a time in the far past. All right, guys. Remember, 40K is awesome. So are you. He's Billy, and I'm Colin because someone has to be. We adore you all, and I hope that you will. Oh wait, Billy, I did forget something.
Okay.
It's Billy's birthday. No, I'm kidding.
No.
It's not Billy's birthday. I was totally kidding. It is my friend Matthew's birthday, and he turned 50. So that's pretty cool.
Congrats.
And it's on the 4th of July. So we usually do a big 4th of July thing, but this year we're not. Anyways. Okay. This isn't the only week I'll talk about this. I am in love with Feculent Narma and all of the other funny names. The Sloppity Bile Piper and all these different names. I am going to have a best in tabletop competition for what the silliest and most fun names are. So not just this week, but this week and next week, in our comments on YouTube, share with us the name of a unit or a character that you think is either the most awesome name or the most entertaining name. One of those. Put it in the Discord. What we're going to do is we'll make a survey and we're going to take a vote. And this is a thing that is very important to me. So,
can I tell a story? Can I tell a story about that? Just because it's a fun story. You said you didn't want to go away.
No, you're fine.
When I first got into this hobby, which was more than a Bortel ago, sometime in the early 90s, I was a little 13, 14-year-old kid. I was going on a hike with my mom. And I was telling her about this new thing that I was really in love with and all of the cool names of things. And I told her about the Great Unclean One of Nurgle. And to this day, she still says, "Oh, that's the game with the Great Unclean One of Nurgle, isn't it?" In this happy little 5-foot-tall, 70-year-old woman voice. And there are great names in this game.
Didn't she also watch the episode where I made fun of the Sloppity Bile Piper's name?
Probably, yeah.
And you told me that she was super amused by that?
Yes, because
how do you get into bile piping? Well, my father was a bile piper, and
a little sloppy at it, but
yeah, he was a little sloppity. Yeah, so he was not great at it, but then I was really messy, and so while my name is actually Stephen Bile Piper, they started calling me the Sloppity Bile Piper because I kept making a mess. And with that, we're going to wrap up the show. And on that bombshell, he's Billy, and I'm Colin because someone has to be, and we'll be back next week at our normal time of 7 a.m. We love you all. We appreciate you all. If you see me at Tacoma Open, make sure to say hi. Bye, everybody.
Bye.